As I go further down this sort of rabbit hole that is really just the process of getting these stories done, um, it's amazing to look at the influences that might have gotten me into the writing field and to see how far I've deviated from that. Um, Not too long ago, I was looking at my old, basically, bookshelf that I have, just to clear out some of the books, and I'm looking at like books that I've had for well over a decade, going all the way back really to my undergrad years, and seeing the books that really inspired me, that really influenced me, books that I really enjoyed reading, that kind of put the spark in my head of, man, I'd like to be a writer one day. I'd like to be an author. Um, to kind of look at those books and for me to see them now, so many of them were genre based. They were thrillers. They were some sci-fi, some fantasy, but mostly it was like thrillers, mysteries. These sort of like unreliable narrator tales, ones that were really gritty and written really with, I guess, a strong degree of kind of suspense within the writing. And I remember looking at that and just thinking that nothing I do now matches that at all. And it's not out of some feeling of that I couldn't do it, but simply just a lack of interest in it. I mean, it's quite amazing to look at what kind of influenced at least me, and to see that I'm not writing in that genre at all anymore. It's as though I were a completely separate individual. And I think with writers, that tends to kind of happen. You get inspired by something, and maybe you spend a couple years writing it and writing that genre for maybe, a year, 2, 3, maybe 5, and you get tired of it and you move on. You spend so much time in the genre that you want something fresh and something new, and new writers that you read inspire you. For me, it was interesting in that the thing that made the big shift for me was that I actually went for my MFA, so I'd already been writing for at least several years. Within like the speculative realm, I was writing like just basically straight horror, like just fantasy horror, like stuff that maybe Madbury or King would write. And remember during my MFA, my professor basically had pulled me aside and was like, the thing that you wrote for this pastiche, which was basically a pastiche of another author who I was studying, which is much more literary. It was a much more literary sort of exercise. He basically said, this pastiche you wrote is really, really strong. Why are you sticking with the genre stuff? The stuff that you're writing, the horror stuff, the sort of speculative stuff, why are you sticking with that? Because the speculative stuff you're writing reads so cliche, it reads so basic, and it's stuff that I've seen before so many times. But this pastiche that you did of this author, this more literary thing, basically it was a short story. He basically said something along the lines of like, what things that you kind of explored with this are so interesting that I'd rather see you do this. I'd rather you take basically the rest of this class and focus a lot on this instead. And that's sort of what kind of sealed it for me. That's sort of what kind of changed me from doing the speculative stuff to that. It was that little nudge, that little bit of having someone else say, I've seen what you're doing with this, consider doing this instead. And I'd been writing, again, speculative for years. I mean, I'd probably written, I think, at least 4 or 5 like horror books before I even got into my MFA. Obviously, none of them ever got published. None beyond my critique partners. I don't think any will ever see the light of day. But that was kind of the switch over for me, and it felt good in many ways to leave it, to make that change. It felt fresh. It felt new, and it felt really exciting. It was at a time when I feel like I was probably pushing the speculative thing a little too far anyways, that I had kind of gone with it for so long. It was fun, it was awesome, but I couldn't get much further with it. There wasn't much left to kind of go with. I was out of ideas, and so to switch over was awesome. And I think for a lot of us, though, it's maybe not always that subtle. Maybe it's not some sort of professor or some sort of mentor telling you, maybe making a suggestion that you make a switch. I think for a lot of us, and even myself, I've noticed as well, like even within like the lit fic realm, the stuff that I write, maybe, you know, stuff I was working on perhaps 4 or 5, you know, maybe, I don't know, at this point it's been like 9 years. So stuff I might have been working on maybe like, you know, 4 years ago or something like that, is different now. You know, there was a time when I was writing a lot of stories that were about like just these awful characters, these sort of awful narrators that were just doing, you know, these interesting things, but were just horrendous people. People you wouldn't necessarily root for, but I just thought was really interesting and really edgy stuff. That now is almost all gone. Even that type of style. The stuff that I'm working on in the short story collection here, the stuff you'll see in both the novel that I plan to self-publish later this year, or even the other novel that I worked on as well. None of it's like that. It's all much more. There's a lot more heart to it. There's a lot more purpose and a lot more deepness to it than just some nihilistic sort of character, you know, doing all these horrendous things. It's very different. And so, as much as it can be inspiring, I guess, to have that start, to have those books that kind of make you want to be a writer and to revisit them, I think that as we go on this process, you are going to lose that. You are going to sort of drop away from that, most likely, and it's not a bad thing. It's not like you're not losing your way or anything like that. You're not forgetting why you started or whatever. It's just about your growth. You've grown now. You've matured as a writer. You found something that you enjoy more, something that's of more interest to you. And it's interesting that within the writing realm, you always need to pigeonhole yourself. You always need to sort of decide, hey, I'm going to be an author of this genre, right? It's very, very strange to me. Any other art form, you know, whether it be like just traditional painting, right? Or something like that, just more traditional arts. Plenty of, you know, painters go through periods of time where they have different inspirations, right? You know, like think of like Picasso's Blue Period, and then think of things that he did later, right? It's a different style. It's a different interest. But with writing, it seems like we always need to pigeonhole ourselves. We always need to market ourselves or find our niche in some sort of genre and become a household name within that. And for me, it's never been that way. For me, it's always been it's the love of the books, the love of the novel, the love of the art form. But what I write and what I explore is very, very different. In many respects, I suppose I'm sort of always doing pastiches. I'm always writing stories that honor a certain aspect or a certain genre, or a certain style of book that I really like, and then moving on to the next one. And I surmise that'll probably be how my entire literary career, if you want to use that term, will probably go. It's never about one defined genre. It's about a love of books in general and the things that I'm interested in at the moment in writing in that style. So for those that maybe that find themselves in a similar situation where you can't fit into a certain box, I think that's fine. I think that can be a good thing. You know, maybe it hurts you marketing wise. Maybe it hurts you with the branding that you aren't a household name for a certain genre. But for me, I can't see it being really any other way.